slam decks that can't do anything otherwise. So it could play into that. We've seen Savjz ban Hunter in the past, but so is Lucky. And I think based off the rest of the classes they have, especially depending on what kind of Warlock Savjz is running, I think he's comfortable playing against a Miracle Rogue because I think he's very likely to bring something like Handlock to the table.
And the game has started. Savjz is on the coin, which is pretty important for the Miracle Rogue. On the other hand, Lucky is having a Haunted Creeper. He's probably mulliganing for Argent Squires, but he doesn't get him.
Yeah, he has Karen. Oh, he also has Spectral Knight in the Token Druid, which can give the Miracle Rogue a really tough time. You can't really remove it that easily. So if you can sneak in the damage and push your way closer to within combo range, then the Spectral Knight really pulls a lot of weight. So we'll see how Lucky's deck choices end up working out for him. Things like Cairn, you don't really feel like you get more than one chance to play him just because of things like Sap, and double Sap is kind of popular once again. So I don't really expect too much work.
Oh my god, that hand from Savjz, he has everything. He has a coin, a gadget, and concealed preparation, and a backstab. He only needs an SI7 to be... And Shiv is also pretty nice, I guess.
Savjz really does have everything. He's got good looks, he's good at games, and he's got the perfect miracle hand. So
would you say that...
You're completely right.
Would you say that Lucky actually has to get lucky to win versus this hand?
I think he needs a little bit more than luck to win, at least from the start. Sometimes Miracle Rogues, they have the great start, but then they draw, like, let's say they start the preparation chain, then they draw into, like, the Farseer and 2 SI7s, and all of a sudden they just don't draw anymore throughout the rest of the game. That is possible. So it's not that this game is sealed by any chance, but the fact is, it's a high likelihood that Savjz won't be hurting, especially with things like Shiv and Fan of Knives to combo with things like preparation and gadgets in the future.
On the other hand, Lucky's hand is actually pretty bad. Like, being a token druid, you want to have a lot of small minions. Like, you want to have Argent Squire, you want to have Harvest Golem, you want to really deal as much damage as possible in the early turns to be able to seal the game with the combo. Lucky only has like a Thalnos, which doesn't do anything, and then he doesn't have a follow-up on turn 4. He has the Druid for turn 5, and he will be able to start playing from that turn, but it might be definitely too late.
Yeah, he might have to pick up something like Innervate to kind of throw the tempo back in his favor, but see what he picks up, a Haunted Creeper, and a Spectral Knight. So a Spectral Knight could do some heavy lifting if his opponent's hand is bad. Say his opponent's holding things like Conceal, a Cold Blood, or all these kind of situational cards that don't actually have anything to do for the next couple turns. Lucky can start pushing his way back in, and he has ways to kind of continue to address the board with things like Wrath and even a Druidic Claw Charge.
Spectral Knight is pretty important also because if there is no minion on Savjz's side this turn, then Spectral Knight will be just a very nice drop, taking control of the board and hard to remove on the as well. So normally, if Miracle Rogue has like a Farseer and an SI7 on board, then he can easily clear the Spectral Knight. But without it, he will have to attack with a weapon or just ignore it. And if you ignore it, it just deals 4 damage every turn. So it's pretty good. And he gets a Savage Roar as well.
Yeah. That's one important card that he might need later on. He already has done 5 damage, but he needs to kind of piece together more. And I think Spectral Knight might be one of those keys to unlock. I don't really like the Druidic Claw here. There's way too many ways for your opponent to answer with that many cards coming up on turn 5. It feels like Spectral Knight is the easy choice.
Yeah, that's a very good card to play right now. So how do you deal with the Spectral Knight being Savjz? So you can't sap it. You just use 1 durability from your weapon. So do you refresh your weapon and Deadly Poison and play Edwin? I guess you just have to Gadget Sun and then coin Conceal. This is the best play to do. Like, you just ignore the Spectral Knight.
Yeah, I think so. It's just too good to coin, Conceal, prep, Shiv, whatever you want to do, and just continue to draw into an answer of what your opponent has. Who knows? Maybe you have Blade Flurry and your Deadly Poison. You can use that without having to extend into something like Assassin's Blade, and then you efficiently remove.
And on the other hand, the Druid has nothing he can do with the Gadget Sun. The Gadget Sun will stay there, will draw a lot of cards next turn, and also will deal some points of damage. So it's pretty dangerous. So the strategy that Druid has to apply here is just deal as much damage as possible. So I would definitely play like Druid of the Claw as a charge guy and deal 8 damage. Like, what you want to do is you want to get them to 14 and then somehow survive till turn 9 and then win. or maybe like top deck and Innervate and Force of Nature and win turn 7. But that's 2 cards, and he only has he needs 2, so he can
Yeah.
only draw 1.
He might be looking at a turn 8 exit strategy at best if he goes for that play. I completely agree. Your opponent just drew 4 cards. It's very likely he has a way to continue to chain draw if you play something slow like Karen. So you have to go for something like Druid of the Claw, in my opinion. The problem is the follow up is still pretty weak. Ancient of Lore, when your opponent gets to build the board, sometimes feels even too slow. You might have to heal if that's the case. If you feel like your opponent has potential lethal damage, if that's what they're sneaking in. So Lucky's in a pretty tough spot. He's thinking about it for a while. He's opting to go for Cairn. It is the much riskier play, considering Drew the Claw plays to one of his outs, but he's going to go for it.
I definitely don't like the current play here. It's kind of like setting up the board for the combo next turn from Innervate, but on the other hand, there is Sap, so playing Druid of the Claw as a charge deals 4 points of damage, and even if it's just sapped, you still can play it as a charger, so...
Sap for 0 mana too, so it just feels like you actually just did nothing. You just spent 6 mana to pass your turn. You didn't even hero power.
Exactly, and like with the Druid of the Claw being a charger, you deal that much damage, and then you also can scare the Miracle Rogue to trade into your minions because he might feel like he's dead next turn if he doesn't clear.
Yeah.
So you stall basically, and you increase your chances of winning on turn 9. But anyways, being Savjz, what do you do here? Like you have so many options, so you can just play your whole hand, right? Kind of.
Exactly. You could kind of play any kind of combination, depends on your comfort level. You also know that your opponent's been playing really slow. You expect him to be slightly more aggressive with something like Spectral Knight. He doesn't have an opportunity to do that. And he does have the SI7 agent to kind of do some damage to the Spectrum Knight to make it kind of hard if he doesn't have the cards he can trade into it. But vice versa, I think he's got so many options. He just has to pick up Leroy, and then he's going to be completely set.
You know what's funny? He doesn't even have to trade with it right now because even if his opponent has an Innervate and combo, he won't be dead next turn because that will be 20 points of damage.
20 damage, yeah. So good confident play from Savjz, recognizing what Lucky can do on his following turn. Lucky picks up his second Spectral Knight, which again, this would be good in I think other matchups, particularly things against like Warrior, for example, where they can't just use Execute and Shield Slam. But Lucky was starting off in the Druid, has put the risk to the Miracle Rogue, and as a result has not been paying off whatsoever. And I can guarantee you that Karen most likely will not be played for the rest of this game. It's just sitting there dead.
I'm just counting damage, by the way. I'm thinking what would happen if you'd actually play Druid of the Claw as a charge, but he wouldn't win this turn, for sure. So right now he needs to clear the board somehow. How do you clear the board? Kind of. You can actually play, because you've seen one sap, if you really want to, you can play Druid of the Claw as a taunt. You can raft the 3/3 and kill the 4/4. But what do you achieve doing this? Not much.
It doesn't really matter that you remove his card draw source anymore because he has 8 to 9 cards because he's going to be drawing one next turn. But at the same time, Gadget Stand continues to thread through. So you feel a little helpless because sure, you kill off the Gadget Stand, but he has cards, and not to mention that you're still playing a very defensive game. And Lucky has to kind of do something. The rope's counting down. He's going to opt for this Wrath play, which makes me think he's going to play something like Druid of the Claw.
Spectral Knight. No, I guess Spectral Knight is fine. Like you have to assume that you're not dead with Leroy.
Sure. I guess it's one of his primary ways to win from this point on.
Well, the thing is, like, Leroy is not lethal because Leroy plus Edwin is 24. So still, and he doesn't have mana for that as well. Like, even if there is a Leroy double Shadow Step. And turn 9 is closer and closer, so if he's able to get the Force of Nature in the next 2 turns and survive till turn 9, interesting.
It does kind of require Savjz to a few things. Like he has to kind of let the Spectral Knight do damage and be sticky on the board.
And
he's
also
really
Savjz doesn't have the Leroy yet. I didn't want to mention it before because he still had a Gadget Stand, but sometimes it happens that Leroy is the last card in your deck. And if you don't get Leroy, but you get all those Shadow Step and stuff, like, what do you do? How do you finish the game?
Well, he has 28 damage through the Assassin's Blade, so there's that. You have Loatheb for the following turn in case they have combo. And you still can't die to an innervate combo the following turn unless they have second innervate and hero power or power of the wild, something equivalent to that. No, not even that. You still only have one more mana left over. So I think this is the best play. Lothab actually gives him a lot of insurance in this department. And you can think you just push for damage, put your opponent to 12. Or even just play safe. Doesn't really matter. I think he's in full control.
Yeah, definitely he has full control right now. Lucky, can he even remove Edwin? He can't.
Not by my count.
And he's staring at potential 13 damage on board. So only 6 more from hand, and he's dead. And
it's just one Leroy.
Yeah, it's just one Leroy.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Savjz doesn't have 6 points of damage in his hand. He only has 5.
Well, he has a lot of ways to pick it up with Blade, Flurry, Leroy, even a Shiv to the face.
Yeah, even a Shiv is deadly. I guess you have to, like, being lucky. What do you even assume? Like, the board is so big, and you have to assume the Leroy is there. Like, Savjz draws so many cards. Do you just drop Ancient of Lore and heal?
That might be your best for course of action. Because everything else feels like a weaker version of this. You put a Druid of the Claw out, and you try to defend up. It's basically trying to gain 6 health, but if he has any kind of spell removal, then like second sap, you're done. He's going to go for the Ancient Allure play, which passes back to Savjz. He doesn't top deck the damage to end the game, at least with on paper. He could kind of go for a big creative play, which I don't think he needs to do. Like, you don't need to like backstab your own Thalanos to draw a card. You can just play Lothab, prevent your opponent from playing the combo, really just be able to control the state of the board, and then go from there.
You can even sap as well, because if you play Lothab and sap, you have a strong board. You've just dealt a lot of damage, and what your opponent can do, like if you switch off the spells, they can only like Ancient of Lore and heal again, which ensures lethal next turn. So Savjz is in a pretty good position. Like, even Lothab is not necessary, even because if there is no Lothab, the combo deals only 14 points of damage. So Savjz still sits comfortably on a 17.
Yeah, I don't think there's any assortment of draws that he can have on the next card that can win him this game right now. And he's staring at so much damage. That Assassin's Blade is just ridiculous. 28 damage that has accumulated over it. Lucky top decks is Violet Teacher. Not to mention, all of his spells cost 5 more, and I don't think there's anything he can do. He's just going to concede, and Savjz starts the series off with a 1-0 lead.
He definitely
sap. So you can kind of make an argument, and he's only running 1 Farseer, so you can make an argument that he's playing a little bit on the greedier side of things.
I love the fact how those decks are like only 3 cards different, and they can really be different in a kind of like, how do you play those decks and how do you execute the returns.
Absolutely. Things like Assassin's Blade, sometimes you're racing for damage. It doesn't necessarily always come down to card advantage with things like Gadget Sand draws. Sometimes you just have something like Assassin's Blade and put your opponent within lethal range because you have Leroy in Shadow Step. And it really does depend on how the early game pans out and how you're able to deal with your opponent's board. If something like SI7 Agent does 6 to 9 damage, then all of a sudden you recognize that you can be the aggressor. You set up Eviscerate to the face because you have a Leroy in hand, and whatever you top deck pretty much can end the game in that respect.
We just seen the mulligan, and there was something really interesting. Like, Lucky got a coin, and he was lucky in that aspect. But on the other hand, he got SI7, and he mulliganed it away. Like, I would definitely keep SI7 in my starting hand. Savjz did keep his SI7.
Did he really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he gets Fan of Knives, I guess, in that spot. I thought I did see the SI7 Agent. He has double Gadget Sand, which, as much as it looks really good, also might be a curse. Because sometimes you might have the ability to do a lot of draws, and you can even bait out the first one. But sometimes it might get you into the pseudo feeling of, yeah, I'm going to draw a lot of cards, when your opponent has the ability to do lots of damage anyways, despite not having the Gadget Sand.
Yeah, basically,
so it might be a trap.
It's a race. Like, it's definitely a race. This game is not about board control and like who draws more cards. It's definitely the player who wins is the player who deals more damage and then faster. So not having the low drops, it might be pretty painful, and mulliganing that SI7 away. Like, also, he doesn't have the conceal. I'm talking about Lucky's hand. He doesn't have the conceal to actually follow up with Gadgetson. So His hand is really weird and awkward right now. Hard to play. On the other hand, Savjz, he doesn't have a Gadget-san. He has Assassin's Blade, which might be really important in this matchup.
I think so. You bring up a really good point too, where again, it's not about the board control, but he doesn't really have minions, and he mulligan away his SI7 agent. He's already playing a minion light deck, and not only the fact that SI7 agent is extremely versatile, and you're able to use it not only as removal but pressure and damage, and you can shadow step it in really tight situations. It's also the fact that he doesn't have anything to do in these early turns, just like you mentioned, Dimsh, and he's just caught passing. And not only is he caught passing, but he's also playing a little bit passive with his turns that are in sequence. He's only hit the opponent's face once, and he's coming up on turns where he's a little bit indecisive. And these 1 or 2 points of damage with the hero power dagger can make all the world's difference in winning or losing the game.
That's why Miracle Rogue is a really difficult deck to play, because it's not about just dropping a Gadget-san, concealing it, and then having fun. It's about all those small things like your mulligan, just attacking with a weapon, dealing damage when it matters, trading when it matters, ignoring the board. So it's a very difficult deck to play, and he decides to play the Gadget-san, but there is actually no follow-up, right?
Oh, he drew into a preparation, though, so he has that. And he's able to use the Eviscerate and remove what's on board. Savjz does have a way to address it as well, so it's not like he took major damage from this. In fact, all he saw his opponent do was cycle through.
Well, Savjz can definitely remove it with Eviscerate.
Do you like using preparation to Eviscerate so you can start putting on damage with Assassin's Blade?
It's a tough question, because then you have to really think about what's your follow-up. I feel it's not a bad play, actually, because next turn... Wait, it really depends like how much damage you want to deal with the Assassin's Blade, because playing Assassin's Blade on 6 with a Deadly Poison is also a very nice play. That's 20 points of damage, so you basically put a clock on the board. Right now, like just playing Assassin's Blade and wasting preparation, you only deal 3 damage. But on the other hand, it's a race, so...
I mean, you're losing 2 damage, but you do have a way to make it up over the next few turns. And your opponent does, like, I think getting ahead when you have something like Shadow Step also might be really important. I think he is going to go for this preparation play, or sap or something, like just basically deal with the Gadget right here. Or he might even go with Deadly Poison and start whacking away too. He's thinking about it.
Yeah, because like if you top the Gadget next turn, you will definitely Gadget Conceal anyway.
The Eviscerate is damaged though, so say you use Sap, you have the Eviscerate to kind of be versatile as removal and go to the face. So there is legitimacy, I think, to using Sap here as well.
You really think so? I think it's only legitimate because we see the second Gadget-san. Basically, if you face the first Gadget-san, you can assume that your opponent's hand was really bad and he wanted to cycle at least like 2 cards. So you definitely want to remove the Gadget-san. Because sapping Gadget-san doesn't solve the problem. Like the Gadget-san will be there next turn, and your opponent can still play some spells and cycle some cards. So I definitely like the removal here.
Fair enough. No, I completely side with you. I was kind of just talking about like why Savjz took a long time because he did hesitate.
Wow, he picked up the Gadget,
and that's important. There is a spell power creature on the board, so it's not exactly the safest despite having conceal, but that is very important because Savjz's hand was looking a little bit low, and he definitely needs some fuel in order to continue to light this fire.
Do you have to really play it now? You're just facing an Azure Drake, and you can sap the Azure Drake, play Deadly Poison, and what then? Deal 5 damage. But then Azure Drake will come next turn anyway, so I feel like you have to risk it. You just play Gadgets and Conceal, draw a card, force your opponent to use the Flurry, I guess, and or double Fan of Knives and stuff like that. The chances are that he'll... Is there a Deadly Poison, by the way, on the weapon? There is not, right?
No, right now it's just a 3... Oh, you mean on your opponents?
Oh, opponents, yeah.
I don't believe so. I think Lucky just drew into his Deadly Poison recently.
Okay. So still, playing Gadgets in here, you are making an assumption that there is no combination of cards.
Well, he picks up a way to kind of deal with the Azure Drake immediately, and that backstab was a very important pickup. And now Savjz has a clean board. His opponent has to do big things in order to get it clear here.
that backstab was so important for this game. Now he's super safe with the gadgets, and he has a follow-up with spells. He has that deadly poison, so he will be able to start doing damage to his opponent. Like even a 4/4 on board is still huge because it deals 4 points of damage. It will push the damage meter towards Savjz, so pretty nice. Being lucky here, what do? You still don't have the conceal card, so it's pretty weird. You want to deal with Gadgetzan, but you really can't unless you draw into Blade Flurry. So like you can kind of play Fun of Knives, draw a card, and if you top deck Blade Flurry, you just Deadly Poison and Blade Flurry, but it's like 3 cards to deal with one Gadgetzan. He's going for it.
I think that's what his best course of action is.
He got it! Oh my god, he got
Are
Blade
you
Flurry!
kidding me?
This is so sick!
That was the one card I think he needed in order to deal with this concealed Gadgetzan. You can't write that. I can't believe that's exactly what had happened.
He nimshed it. It wasn't lucky.
I would say he just got lucky, maybe.
He just got lucky. We need a chat emote for that.
Oh, that is so devastating. You know, Savjz was relying on this to get a lot of chain draws. Granted, he still has a lot of damage. He can draw some stuff with Fan of Knives and his Blood Mage Thalnos. But man, is that disappointing.
Nice. Oh yeah, that was pretty painful. And if you're a Savjz, you're probably looking at your opponent's hand, and you've seen that he actually top decked that card, because a lot of pro players, they actually like watch which card your opponent is playing, and because you can see like when your opponent is hovering on a card, so it's like when you play a taunt, and if they are hovering on the card which is like on the left side, you might assume that there is a Black Knight and they don't want to use it now. So there's a lot of cards like that, a lot of mind tricks like that.
Sure. And, you know, if you're Savjz, you're just feeling like, you know, I wish I had a way to kind of deal with it. Granted, he still has 10 damage with the Assassin's Blade. And again, if he picks up Leroy, that's actually game if his opponent doesn't have the Sen'jin being played, which Savjz doesn't know about, or something like a Farseer being dropped. So by all means, Savjz can just end the game next turn if he top decks something that can just be lethal.
Can he really? He has like 8 points of damage right now with the Assassin's Blade and Farseer. So it leaves his opponent at like 14. And with Leroy, it will be only 12. So Leroy doesn't solve it. So being lucky here, you probably want to... Do you want to play that Gadgetzan? I guess you don't.
He's going for a Van Cleef play. He's going for the Shadow Step as well and try to buff it up as big as he can.
It's pretty reasonable. Like, your opponent has only 3 cards. Your opponent is struggling with the cards. So, and you don't want to play Gadgetzan, so you make an assumption that there is no sap. Like, you make this gamble here.
Yeah, but this is going to be so devastating when he realizes that Savjz does have that sap. Oh, man.
It's kind of like throwing the game away. Savjz is probably like super happy here.
Yeah. Especially when you have Gadgetzan to continue to push out the draws. I think right now he's going for a Hail Mary play because Savjz is so ahead in life. He has Assassin's Blade to kind of whittle him down. He felt like he needed to win over the course of a couple turns. He draws Conceal.
Finally,
that
he
is
was
so
waiting
unfortunate.
for that. He was really waiting for that Conceal there.
Yeah. Certainly. Not even just for Gadgetzan, but say he went for that big Van Cleef play. And he had Conceal to top it off.
Leroy is actually lethal now, so... Even if you do Gadgetzan, you have to assume there's no Leroy, because what else can you do? Like, I guess you can Gadgetzan Shiv into the 1/1 and see what you draw and then conceal. And but how do you even win? Like, you're really losing the race in here.
Do you even Shiv the Thanos and give him another draw if you're going to conceal?
Oh, I guess you
do you want to give him another out so that way he can, or not another out, but another way he can draw into lethal right here?
Yeah, it's pretty tricky because, like, if you don't do it, if they have Eviscerate, and we know that they have Eviscerate, it's 2 points of damage, right? So...
Okay, well, he's going for Sap.
Sap is much better.
It deals with the card, and you know he has 2 anyways. Wow, Savjz tap decks the Azure Drake, which is important to get the draws going. Maybe Blade Flurry.
How much is it? 7? 12? Okay, it's not... He's not dead yet. It's not lethal yet, but it's still a lot. Like, you can even play Thalnos and Eviscerate face here for 6 points of damage, which is pretty sick. And I feel like you can still... Oh, okay, shift phase is
Shit
also
for
fine.
3. You still make up that damage. You're at 25. You don't feel that threatened, but there still is possibility for you to die if there's like Leroy double Shadow Step Cold Blood, but he already saw 2 Shadow Steps. So Savjz feels so confident that his opponent cannot burst because Lucky has lost 2 primary ways right now of just winning this game. You know, he already used
Shadow
up his Shadow
Steps.
Steps. He doesn't have Leroy, and he already committed to a big Van Cleef before, but it's sitting back in his hand.
This is looking pretty bad for Lucky. He will be able to draw a lot of cards. Senjin might be super important here.
Oh, but
Because
he's not
normally-
Shiv. You're right,
Then-
Namch. I completely agree with you, but he's not going to do it. He's just going to go for the chain draws and hope for a miracle.
Is he going to heal at least?
14. You're staring at 5 damage. That puts you at 17. That's still Leroy Shadow Step range. But I feel like that's the best option to win from this point on. You have
Reparation
to
is a
look-
blank. Yeah, you have to heal. If there is no Leroy this turn, it may actually turn ugly for Savjz.
See, SI7 agent is not going to cut it. He's only got 11 damage, but he does have a way to deal with the gadget sand. And I think Savjz is okay kind of playing a little bit more on the control side because, again, he saw his opponent use most of his burst. He's not that uncomfortable and feeling like he has to race. And this is where the card advantage does end up favoring Lucky, but at the same time, he's not sitting at the most comfortable health total. Not to mention that he has lost his farce here, so there's no way to put himself out of range anymore if his opponent draws into lethal damage.
How does this game actually turn out to the board control game? Like, this is so unusual. This should be a one-on-one, like a boxing match, like one guy attacking, second guy attacking, and just like trading blows. And here we have like a board control match. And Lucky right now, he has to get the board control back to be able to get back to the game. And with Senjin, it's pretty... Shouldn't be that difficult, actually. Like, 10 mana, Senjin, he can backstab 1, he can SA7 it. Do you even like... I think you play Deadly Poison even. So weapon up Deadly Poison, kill Farseer, backstab the SA7, play your SA7 and play your Senjin. And you're good. Because
Yeah,
you have...
I think so.
And then next turn you can play Lothab and win in like 2 turns. Like you basically win in 3 turns if you time it correctly.
Which is exactly how many cards he has left before he starts fatiguing, by the way. Lucky has drawn through most of his deck. Savjz still has about 1/3 of his deck. And I completely agree with your assessment. I think he needs to be pretty defensive. Put out the Senjin is excellent timing because it's very clear that your opponent might be drawing something like Leroy with that few cards left and maybe drawing into his last piece of damage. So being defensive here is good. Not to mention that Lothab will secure your board position the following turns, and maybe Lucky can win this thing. Oh, a second stat to deal with the Van Cleef.
Poor Edwin. He will never win with that Edwin. Edwin
Wow.
is not his friend.
Someone should Photoshop the troll face on the sap picture portrait.
Oh yeah, definitely. The card is
Van
so
Cleef.
annoying.
God, that is so titillating.
Yeah, I was just reminiscing because I actually lost to Sap in one of the important tournaments in the past in World of Warcraft.
Oh, what was
So-
sap like in WoW TCG?
It was like exhausting the guy, and if a guy was exhausted, he couldn't taunt. So it was kind of similar. Like you were removing the taunts, and
Okay.
yeah, and it remained exhausted as long as it didn't get damage. So kind of like a standard WoW sap, like from World of Warcraft.
Oh, that's interesting. It also kind of acts like a weird silence, like you said. Real quick, by the way, he drew Cold Blood, so the damage is starting to tally in. 4 from the Cold Blood, 3 from Deadly Poison. That's 13 with what he has on board.
I
And
think
he just kind of piece it together. And he still hasn't drawn Leroy, by the way.
this is a Lothab turn, by the way. This is the turn where you clear the board and you push with damage. So you play. I feel like you even attack. Wait, if you weapon up, this is 3 mana. Lothab, this is 8. And you still can Cold Blood. So you probably weapon up, kill the 3/3, play Cold Blood on one of the minions on a 3/3. Still play Lothab and then attack into your opponent. That should be lethal next turn. And you like shut down your opponent with Lothab and you put yourself in a situation where you win next turn.
He's not going for Lotheb. In fact, I think he's going to go for another big Van Cleef based off the order he's playing all his cards. Yeah, he's reaching for it. I mean, at this stage, Lotheb might secure him the game afterwards. But all of a sudden, you know, Savjz looked like maybe he had a way to end the game if he was able to draw into his damage, but he's been kind of whiffing. Preparation's been kind of useless. He doesn't have a way to deal with it immediately, and the Deadly Poison is not going to do it. Savjz drops game 2, which means this series is tied up.
This is pretty nice. Look, gets the standard hand. On the other hand, with like the Nerubian X now, it's also pretty interesting because you kind of like clear the board with your spells, with like Hellfires, and you also get the minions that will help you to push the board situation. So Handlock right now with Nerubian X is kind of like more of an aggressive deck as well, because you can use those Nerubian X to deal as much damage as possible and then follow up with the Leroy combo. You don't even have to face test the Leroy. Leroy Power Overwhelming is still pretty strong. Not to mention the Power Overwhelming can also be used on the Nerubian Egg to clear something like an Azure Drake, which is pretty huge.
It's curious because Savjz isn't going double power. That was a common way to synergize with the egg. But instead he's going for 1 power overwhelming. So that way you don't feel like you throw away the combo if you use it early on an egg. Speaking of just power potency, he does have that Mountain Giant start followed by a Sludge Belcher, which could spell disaster for the Miracle Rogue, especially when they don't have things like Coin. So that way they can activate some of their spells like Eviscerate to take care of that threat early on.
If Lucky mulligans that SA7, I will be so disappointed.
Well, it worked out for him in the previous game, so maybe he knows something we don't. All right, he's keeping everything.
Okay,
but
cool.
Maybe he was onto something.
This hand is not bad. Also, like if he gets the Cold Blood, I really like Cold Blood versus Handlock because you play that SA7 early or like a Farseer or something else, and then when they drop a Giant, you just kill the Giant with that minion you just played and Cold Blood. He doesn't have the Cold Blood now, but maybe he will get one at some point.
By the way, this Thanos and Eviscerate is also very important because on turn 4 you can answer it, and all you have to do is piece together the backstab, and that's 8 damage to immediately eliminate pretty much any threat. You might have the existing Twilight Drake with 9 health, depends on how the opponents play their first hands. But even so, you feel pretty confident to take on anything. So if Lucky draws into a backstab, I think he's going to stabilize early game pretty nicely.
Savjz's hand is also pretty nice, with a Mountain Giant being super important in this matchup, and Sludge Belcher, which is also very annoying. It's like with the Sludge Belchers, I feel like Miracle Rogue actually runs out of saps at some point because you want to sap so many targets. You want to sap the Giants with a taunt. You want to sap Twilight Drakes. You want to sap that Belcher, and at one point you just can't go through. It's like you just have to start killing stuff, and then you just run out of damage. So it's pretty annoying.
Lucky's opting to play the Thanos ahead of time, so that way he can also use Deadly Poison and Eviscerate to deal with something like a Giant. Meanwhile, Savjz has things like Hellfire, like you kind of mentioned, which is really important against some of these 3 health minions that Miracle Rogue has, whether it's Farseer or the SI7 agent. So not only is it an activator, but it's usually a good AoE removal against Miracle Rogue.
What do you do right now? The egg is so annoying, by the way. You want to kill it.
Don't fan of knives.
Yeah, definitely don't fan of knives. I feel like Poison and Edwin possibly to like develop some kind of board and then attack for one with Thalnos. I'm not even sure about attacking with a weapon. The thing is like, if you play Edwin as a 4/4, it's fine because if there is a Hellfire next turn, your guy still lives and maybe you can trade with a 4/4 if you really want to. But I feel like you really want to play Edwin as a 6/6 in this matchup, so playing it as a 4/4 it seems like a waste. Also, you have to be worried about the Iron Beak Owl. So a lot of decks are running Iron Beak Owl, which is pretty dangerous.
Or anything as simple as Power Overwhelming and then kill off the Van Cleef that's 4/4. That's pretty pitiful.
That's true.
There's a lot of answers that Handlock has. In fact, in that situation, maybe you go for Deadly Poison SI7 agent and clear out the Nerubian Egg if you feel like it. He's going for the Van Cleef though. I feel like it is a pretty good compromise to what you were saying, where you develop the board but you don't overcommit. And I like the fact that he's kind of showing restraint, using the Deadly Poison charges where necessary, as Savjz does have this Mountain Giant coming out.
So this is an ideal situation, I guess, for and he gets a shadow step, pretty nice. So how do you deal with the Giant? You can deal 5 damage with. Oh, this is so perfect. You can just wait. Can you? Oh damn! I wanted to play like SA7 and eviscerate into 8/8 and attack it for 1, but you have to combo first somehow. And how
Well,
do you combo?
what you could do. Hmm. Okay, so what you could do is attack into the egg with Van Cleef and then Phantom Knives. Then you can eviscerate and trade Thanos in and use your weapon to kill off the Nerubian. And
You
then
know
you have
what?
a four Van Cleef and be
I
able
see
to
a,
have a great
I see a
board.
sick play in here. Fun of Knives. You enable the egg. You deal 2 points of damage, and then you attack into Giant for 3 points of damage, and then you flurry. So you clear the board, deal a lot of damage, and
Well, I think this plays a little bit better without sacrificing some of your health. So you Phantom Knives and then trade the Thanos in after you eviscerate, which I think is okay. The problem with what you did, what you're suggesting, even though you save eviscerate, is that you lose 4 extra health in this scenario, which you don't want to give extra leeway to the handlock, I think. But I
but on
think
the other hand, you keep following us, so it's
that is
fine. I
true.
guess like
That is true.
this might have been actually a better play because you still have the flurry, which is pretty important later in the game, when the board is like spawned by the handlock.
Fair
Stuff
enough.
like Ancient Watchers and you know the small guys as well. So it's pretty important to have flurry.
Yeah, so by the way, when Lucky takes a long time to play and evaluate his turn, Savjz just takes a few seconds to plop down Sludge Belcher because it's not usually a better turn 5 unless you have something like Faceless and a Giant that's already out there that your opponent can't deal with. Sludge Belcher, you're one of the first players that actually pushed it into Handlock right after it came out. And so
Yeah.
you probably have lots of things to say that are good about this card.
Yeah, definitely look at this turn. It was turn 5, and normally what would you do on turn 5? Like before, you were just coining stuff, but you don't always have a coin. You don't always have a follow-up in terms of like a second Mountain Giant or a Twilight Drake because it's only 4 cards in deck. So having those Belchers, it's like a very strong turn 5 that has to be dealt with. And I think like this is the Shadow Step Edwin turn, by the way. Trade Edwin into it, then kill the token with SI7.
Are you not afraid of Siphon Soul? I guess it's what about playing around Mortal Coil or Siphon Soul?
It's just so tempting to get a big Edwin.
I like the Shadow Step play because there is usually only 1 copy of Siphon Soul. Not everyone runs 2 versus something like Mortal Coil. People often might maybe running 2 as well. Depends on how how people are panning out today in the metagame. Either way, it's still a pretty intimidating board. And unfortunately for Savjz, he doesn't have this Siphon Soul immediately on hand. He has a couple of taunters and walls and AoE clears.
And you know what? Lucky will have Azure Drake and Flurry next turn, so he'll be able to deal 4 damage to the board, just out of nowhere.
Oh man, you're right. That's pretty nasty. So as much as things like the Watcher might come down, with things like Sun Fury, that will get cleared very easily.
Yeah, what do you
This
even
Van
do?
Cleef to do work. It's like your opponent has a giant. All of a sudden, you're playing something like the mirror matchup where
Yeah.
when handlock versus handlock, it just gets out of control way quickly with there's giants versus giants. All right. Well, Savjz is going to kind of allow his opponent to lower him. He does have Molten Giants and Taunts, and he uses his Hellfire, which can get clunky if you have double Hellfire. Not to mention, the longer you wait to use Hellfire, sometimes pigeonholes you into not being able to play it, or maybe 1 at best, because you'd be lowering your health too much.
Right now, being lucky, you probably just drop Azure Drake and see what you draw. You definitely would love to have 8 points of mana so that you can backstab in SA7 the 4/5. But Azure Drake is still pretty good. And also, you can definitely attack into Handlock, leaving him at 16, because then 16 is kind of safe. Like, even if you face 1 Molten Giant, it's still fine. Like, as long as he doesn't go to the level where he can play double Molten. And Cold Blood, you definitely don't play Cold Blood in here. You will use Cold Blood later.
You just play straight into the hand of the handlock with Molten Giants if you just use Cold Blood here.
I feel you can conceal, actually, like, even. Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
Just really hope your opponent doesn't have Shadow Flame. And even so, he needs a way to kind of buff it up a little bit. So Defender of Argus with Coin or even the Power of Overwhelming.
This can be a decisive turn because with Drake and Blade Flurry, Oh, there's Leroy. Okay.
Leroy Shadow
Coin,
Flame. We
Shadow
forgot
Flame.
about that because he does have the extra mana from the coin. Very nice move from Savjz. And clears out one of the big primary damage deal sources. And that's also partially why, like Nimsh, you said, you don't use something like Cold Blood where you might need it for burst damage.
Yeah, definitely. But still, Conceal being played in that moment was an okay play because how many times do you foresee a Leroy and Shadow Flame? Also, having used that Leroy, it's kind of good as well for Lucky because then it's like losing Fangs, right? For Savjz Handlock. It's like he will have to capitalize on the minions now. He won't have this burst potential with Leroy.
Yeah, that is a win condition for Handlock that they often employ if the game drags out long enough and you don't necessarily have these big minions to be throwing away. But now Savjz has a lot of taunters and some pretty good minions with things like Twilight Drake and Defender of Argus. Now, a valid question is, do you even go for something like taunting the Drake? Because are you expecting something like Sap? Yeah, you have a wall in the Ancient Watcher anyways. Do you feel like it's worth taunting both? Sometimes we see streamers don't do that.
Yeah, I feel it's worth taunting both because you only have 16 points of health. So if you taunt only one minion and there is a Leroy Shadow Step and Sap, they will just sap one of the dudes and just finish you, right? Because there is potential 6 damage. So he like Savjz has 10
Sure.
10 health left, right? So yeah, I definitely taunt both.
Okay.
On the other hand, like what do you do here? Being lucky, you can. That +1 health on Ancient Watcher is very annoying because normally you would just sap Blade Flurry and that would do it, but here you can't. So
Yeah, Blade Flurry with Eviscerate clears his board, but it also clears your board and neuters you to the point where you don't have many threats. You could use Cold Blood as well, but again, how much are you willing to give up your own board in order to try to establish something? You still don't have things like your Gadget Stand or your own Leroy to end the game. It seems like Lucky's Leroy has evaded him for most of this series.
yeah, I feel also like he can't really clear the board and just empty his hand because if he gets like how will he win then? He needs to get the gadgets on at some point.
With how little Leroy's been appearing, sometimes you even wonder, did I forget to put Leroy in my deck? Now, there's like a thread about that recently, where it's like, sometimes you wonder, oh my god, I haven't seen it so often. Is there a fact that I don't even have it in my deck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Some people
Well,
are
we've seen
wondering.
Leroy on the handlock side, right?
Sure, I guess so. I'm just saying
Like
that
a nail in the coffin.
at this point, like Lucky is pretty frustrated because he's used so much of his cards and he's stalled for a long time to be able to pick into something like Gadget Sand or his Leroy or some way to potentially squeeze out of the game.
It's like Leroy is mocking him. It's like, hey, dude, like I'm in your deck somewhere, but you will never see me.
Sure.
Not in this tournament.
Like he's like 19 to 20 cards deep in his deck and he doesn't have any of his Gadget Sands or his Leroy. That just feels so bad as a Miracle Rogue, but at the same time, that's sometimes the struggles that you have to face because you just don't have it. You might whiff and as a result run out of steam very quickly.
There was a funny topic on Reddit where somebody actually played a Miracle Rogue and he was frustrated because he didn't get the Gadget Sense, and apparently one of his roommates removed Gadget Sense from his deck.
Right,
So
right. That was what I was referencing.
exactly. I hope this didn't happen here, and that the Gadget Sense is in fact somewhere in this deck.
Lucky whiffs. Another card that isn't Gadget Sand. That could have been something if he has Gadget Sand Sap and then start kind of the comeback train, but now he's forced to use Sap without being able to draw anything else. Not to mention this Ancient Watcher is still doing work, just preventing any kind of burst coming out. So Savjz still looking pretty decent, but he has also used up most of his taunt givers as well. I don't really think there's anything like he used a Defender of Argus. He's also used 2 of his Sun Furies, so there's not really many taunt givers left. He has to kind of win based off what he has here.
It looks really bad for Lucky. Like most of the Miracle Rogue cards, they come in combos. Like preparation, like a final mockery. You stare at how many points of damage? It's 14. Yeah.
You're not dead yet, but you sure feel like it if you're in Lucky's position. Second Molten Giant coming out for Savjz. I think you just attack. You realize you don't really need to lower your opponent's health. You just play the Molten Giant. and see what your opponent's got.
Vanish.
Well,
Oh, there is a gadget son. Does it change
maybe,
anything? Let's see.
maybe.
Preparation.
Oh, well,
Senjin.
cold blood.
I think he can still cold blood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least
Well,
he got that
sap.
gadget, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, he can't sap and Senjin.
Oh man, choices, choices, choices. What will be the last card?
Well, I think he just has to keep drawing to see what's going on. I would even shadow step your own gadget stand to see what your next few cards was, but Lucky doesn't want to see what it is whatsoever. He's done with Miracle Rogue and Savjz.
Like most of decks, like look at Spectral Knight versus Shaman. How do you deal with that? Versus Handlock, it should be a very good card as well because, well, you can't Siphon Solid, right? Basically, when you play something big on turn 5 and a Handlock doesn't have a choice, he will Siphon Soul your minion. But here, he won't be able to. So if also like Shaman is kind of like a counter to Handlock. So it seems Lucky is in a very good position to actually win this match.
I wonder if Spectrum Knight is one of, again, his tech choices to be stronger against something like Miracle Rogue if he needed to face off against Savjz's Rogue deck. Because, again, we see Spectrum Knight being able to do a lot of work in that matchup.
Well, you know, Spectral Knight is kind of like a new card, right? So players didn't have enough time to actually like test everything. So the card is so strong on its own that you really want to test it in those kinds of decks and see how it performs.
Two
Wow,
pair for Savjz.
it looks sick. I mean, the Soulfire is not that good, but Double Mountain Giant is definitely nice.
Yep.
Normally you just hex it. There was no BGH, if I can remember correctly. So this matchup is about, well, normally Handlock has Twilight Drake, and if Shaman has a Airshock, it's pretty good for Shaman. But there is no Twilight Drake in here, so there are Mountain Giants, and how Shaman deals with Mountain Giants is either Hex or Flame Tongue Totem, and we see neither in Lucky's hands, so...
Yeah, unfortunate that he mulliganed away Lightning Storm and he got it right back. As one of his primary cards. Lightning Storm just feels on the more useless side in this time because you don't always have the opportunity to drop something, or there's not many targets worth Lightning Storm because so many things have high health.
Feral Spirit is a nice card to get, but on the other hand, you have to be really worried about Hellfire, and you've seen double Hellfire before. Here you obviously drop the Unbound, but Feral is a good follow-up next turn.
It is, and especially if he picks up something like Flame Tongue Totems in the following turns as well. You just want to set yourself up so that way you might be lucky. All right, Savjz goes and he loses a Mountain Giant. Oh, that's unfortunate, but he does have a Twilight Drake to make up for it. But I think he was hoping to discard something like the coin instead.
What just happened? Oh my god, like
He soul fired the Unbound because he didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah,
but man, he sacrificed the Mountain Giant to do it.
Yeah, it was pretty nasty. I mean, he will be able to play a Mountain Giant next turn, but kind of like a risky play, right? I guess he hoped to discard something like Power Overwhelming or a coin.
I think coin would have been best by far. You're pretty happy with the quality of hand. Shadow Flame is really strong against Shaman because it's AoE clear. Power Overwhelming is just versatile in almost everything it has. You don't want to discard your Mountain Giants or your other Soulfire. So I think overall it was a very good hope for the coin or something like that. But not to worry, Savjz still has lots of threats in his hand: Twilight Drake and a Mountain Giant, and even a Faceless Manipulator.
Oh, Faceless next turn will be so huge if this Mountain Giant survives. And for now, it seems like Lucky doesn't have a way to actually deal with Mountain Giant. Oh, is he going to play Twilight Drake?
Is there a specific order that you kind of liked? Because the idea is that Mountain Giant might get Flame Tongued anyways, and Twilight Drake actually might have slightly more health because I think it's a 4/9 here. Yeah. So you have ability to kind of prevent the trades to be that optimal because the Flame Tongue Totem allows him to go for 8 damage directly.
Basically, it's very tough because every card on the board right now has the throttle. So, and the chance that there is a Flame Tongue or Airshock is kind of the same because you have 2 copies of both in your deck. So I don't know, because if there's a Flame Tongue, he can probably still deal with this Twilight Drake, and the effect will be the same. So I would definitely play the Mountain Giant myself.
Well, it makes sense. You know, if he has Flame Tongue Totem. Again, these minions only could do 8 damage total. But I feel like that with that many death rattles, that's where you drop something crazy like Baron Rivendare and Rockbiter, and you have 2/4/4s, and you draw 2 cards, and you have 4/1/1s.
By the way, when I would be Savjz and seeing that attack from Thalnos, there will be a huge smile on my face. Like, okay, there's no air shock, and there's probably no flame tongue as well. So he's trying to draw into one of them. And then the passive board right now only proves the point. So it looks pretty good for Savjz right now. Like,
I think so. I think so. I think this is an opportunity to continue to load up with big threats. Again, the Feral Spirits comes out a little bit later than Lucky would like to be able to kind of impose on the board to stall for it. This gives the opponent the ability to play something like a Hellfire as well and clean up. Let's see what Savjz draws. He gets a Nerubian Egg. We kind of mentioned before, he has the flexibility of putting out a Mountain Giant with a tapped card, or you can put out a Faceless Manipulator. I think you like going for another big threat because it's clear that he doesn't even have something like Hex.
yeah,
So I think the Mountain Giant is really logical.
I would definitely go for Giant, and I think like even I wouldn't life tap. I would play like Coin the Egg.
Oh, that top deck from Lucky.
There's an air shock.
I think the impact of the Drake's already somewhat felt, but I think it's nice because you still have that one Feral Spirit Wolf to kind of absorb it. But we also see that Savjz is kind of already ahead of it because he's been able to remove, or he's been able to play threats one turn before the removal, and therefore he's able to have impact on his cards every single turn. And as a result, Shaman's value has dropped pretty significantly, and this Urshock isn't as good as it normally is.
Definitely. Also, like Savjz has an Iron Beak Owl to silence the egg if he wants to. So right now, Lucky has to deal with the board somehow, but he won't be able to deal with the Giant. So I guess deal with the Twilight Drake, ignore the Giant, push with some damage, but then he's facing a board clear next turn, a possible board clear at least. Iron Beak plus Power Overwhelming plus Shadow Flame. That's 7 points of mana, and Savjz has exactly that with the coin.
Huh. Lucky's trying to play directly into, at least against something like Faceless, as well as disincentivizing trading in directly. Savjz draws Black Knight, which doesn't really get that many great targets other than Alec here. Feral Spirits often feels a little marginal unless you're able to fight for board directly after that.
I feel being Savjz definitely Iron Beak, Power, Shadow Flame. Because it's all about fighting the board. If the Flame Tongue Totem comes at some point, this board is so dangerous and is able to clear very effectively. But if you clear this board now and just leave 2 spiders and deal 8 points of damage, you're getting ahead. You still have a very nice threat on board. And yeah, I mean, this also works for Lucky because that Lightning Storm enabled him to play Fire Elemental next turn and kill the Mountain Giant with Fire Elemental and one of the Spider tokens if the board is cleared. So he was thinking ahead doing that play.
Good stuff, good stuff. So he's taking a little bit of his time. He's hovering over Lotheb. And Lotheb would also prevent his opponent from being able to secure it. If he had Lotheb with things like the Twilight Drake up, then that could just seal the game because your opponent can't remove your big threats. You're doing big damage every single turn. You're able to use AoE removal and seal the game from that point on. I think he's opting for your play, though. The Iron Beak Owl with the Power Overwhelming clear definitely makes the most sense. And hopefully your opponent doesn't have something like the Flame Tongue Totem or Fire Elemental.
The thing about other plays is that you won't be able to deal 8 damage with Mountain Giant, so it feels so wasteful to not do it.
Yeah, you don't want him to attack into a totem or something.
Yeah, exactly. But, the second Earthshock might be important later, but definitely here you just clear the Mountain Giant with the Fire Elemental and one of the tokens.
All right, back over to Savjz. Pretty decent cards in his hand. See how he kind of responds. The Fire Elemental is one of the biggest cards, so if he draws something like Siphon Soul, that would be one of its prime targets.
Can he actually deal with this Fire Elemental now? He has the Black Knight for Alakir next turn if Lucky decides to drop Alakir. But still, Fire Elemental is pretty dangerous. It's 6 points of damage.
I don't mind a Lotheb.
Yeah, Lotheb with Taunt is pretty nice. You kind of like force your opponent to play a minion next turn. It will be so so sick if he actually like reads into Alakir. So he plays Lothep and a taunt to kind of like bait Alakir and then kill Alakir with the Black Knight next turn.
Oh, Flame Tongue Totem allows him to pick some good trades up and good damage to the Alakir in following turns. Ideally, you'd like to place the Flame Tongue before the Alakir, be able to pick good trades, and then slide in Alakir for the proper damage.
Do you attack here? It's a very hard turn right now because if you attack into the hero, like you will have to expect Molten Giants. And then your minion will be traded. Well, actually, you can YOLO here, I guess. Because you have an Earthshock. You know that Lothep is not coming back, so you'll be able to play your Earthshock next turn. So if you YOLO Alakir in here and go face with everything, you have one Earthshock to deal with their taunt, and you also have the Lightning Storm kind of to deal with their taunts. Yellow play was definitely a play as well. Not sure if this was the best play. Because now, do you clear Lothep or do you just go face?
It's tough questions. Tough questions.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. It's like really thinking about what you expect to be played.
Well, he's gonna go for it and do direct damage.
Then I feel like playing Alakir was probably better in here.
But now he has Faceless with taunts and the Molten Giants to push out, even the Soulfire to kind of continue to control the board. So Savjz can completely swing it, and hopefully he can survive. Let's see, if he puts up two Giants, rather, or rather he even goes for multiple two taunts, is there a way for Lucky to just win anyways next turn with something?
Well, Lucky definitely has an Earthshock and Alakir next turn. So that's a lot of damage, and he can clear one of the taunts. So, like, if there is a Molten Giant, there will be definitely a Molten Giant. So Molten Giant doesn't matter. The question is he able to bring more taunts in here? I feel like Faceless, right? And then he has double Molten and Sun Fury and kill the 8/5.
Soulfire the 0/3 as well.
Soulfire, this is so important that he's able to do it.
Yep, take away your ability to trade into it, lose a second Sun Fury, but I think this is the move to potentially win him the game. Lucky top decks the Defender of Argus. That's not going to be helpful right now. Let's see, I don't know if Lightning Storm can do anything. That Flame Tongue Totem was really important because if he was able to survive and he had something like Lightning Storm with spell power, maybe he was able to do something.
Well, potentially he can silence one of the giants and kill the other, but it's really wasteful. Roll a totem, then he's 7, so he will be able to Lightning Storm, maybe kill the 2/3 because of that, and play Defender of Argus.
That just feels so terrible. But I think you don't really have that many good targets anyways, or situations where you use Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm does pigeonhole it does restrict your mana for the following turns, so that way you can't Earthshock and Alakir.
Yeah, and Rock Biter.
You're right. If he picks up Rock Biter, he can't use it either.
Yeah, right now you're facing a very tough board. Do you even attack?
I don't think so. If you attack into it, you're playing into the ability to just do damage.
Yeah, if you attack into you're probably dead. But the Black Knight will come and destroy one of the Sons.
We'll see what Savjz draws first. Oh, his third Molten Giant. Wow. Well, why not?
Well, he started with 2 pair, right? So now he can have a
3 of a kind.
Three of a kind. Both of those players are poker players after all, so using the poker tricks to actually get an edge.
This is ridiculous. Lucky needs to get past these 2 taunts still, but he doesn't have enough mana to do everything. If Alakir could just bypass these taunts, sure, he could do the 6 damage, but he is staring at a very tough situation to come back from.
You know what? I guess Savjz is still scared because being on the 6 points of life, Lava Burst plus something.
He killed the Defender of Argus, so that was a very good value for that minion. I think Lucky's kind of happy about that, but he still has only 14 life left. And the Rock Biter, just like you mentioned, Nim, she doesn't have the ability to use everything.
This would be so lethal. Oh my god.
That's it. This series is over. Savjz takes the series 3-1. And Lucky will start the series or start the entire tournament off 0-1 in